2022. Good. And Tim, would someone in your office, on your staff, call the roll?
Judy Benz.
Here.
Steve Burtman. Don Browning Jr.
He's here. It looks like he's
I do see him.
connecting to audio, so he's present.
Okay. Bill Clegg.
Present.
Tony Cortez.
Here.
Michael Francis. Rick Gonzalez. Rick said that he would not be able to participate today. Kathleen Hoffman.
I'm here.
Oh, you made it. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm in the airport, but I'm with you guys.
There you go, Kathleen. There you go.
John Phelps said that he would not be able to be here today also. And Cliff Smith.
I'm here, present.
Okay, quorum is confirmed.
Good, good. Thank you very much. Well, why don't we just introduce ourselves? I think Don is having some audio trouble, but anyway, let's introduce ourselves, and I'll start with me, and we'll just go Tony, and then anyway, we'll go around the Zoom screen. My name is Judy Benz. I am an archaeologist, University of West Florida, retired, and it's my privilege and pleasure to chair the Florida Historical Commission once again. Okay, thank you. And next, let's go to Tony.
Thanks for having me, and introduce myself. I was appointed, the most recent appointee, I believe, in February by Speaker Sprouse. I've been involved in the legislative process for the last 15 to 20 years in Tallahassee, so I'm a Tallahassee resident, and I've done everything from Senate, House employee campaigns, now primarily political fundraising, and some consulting as well. So honored to be here. I know some of the folks, John Phelps from my service in the legislature, and I know Steve Burtman worked a lot with his wife in the Florida House. So honored to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome, Tony. We appreciate you being on the commission, and we will need your connections.
Yeah, they're noticeably absent. They saw me get appointed and they said we're out.
No, I don't think so. Bill, how about you?
Good morning. I am Bill Clegg. I am also one of the non-expert appointees to the commission appointed by Senator Galvano near the end of his term. I am the Manatee County Attorney and also someone with a very strong lifelong interest in history, especially Florida history.
Great. County folks. Cliff?
Yes, you asked me.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Cliff Smith, I'm senior planner with the city of Sarasota. My specialty is historic archaeology, underwater archaeology, conservation of recovered materials. I'm a member of the Florida Historic Commission, past chairman, and still member of the National Review Board for the state of Florida.
Mm-hmm. Great. Michael Hart? Unmute yourself, Michael.
Oh, my name is Michael Hart. I am the Historical Marker Program Coordinator for the Division of Historical Resources, and I am the moderator for today's Zoom call.
Now we're back. Thank you. Just when I say I haven't had a bad Zoom experience, I lost connection. And the sound is breaking up. Kathleen, why don't we go, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. This is Kathleen Kaufman. Hope you can hear me. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Gainesville, formerly the Historic Preservation Chief for Miami-Dade County. I am a Division of Historic historical resources alumni. That's where I started my career. And I am also a director of the National Camp Organization. That's Council on America's Military Past. On the Florida Historical Commission, as you know, and on the National Register Review Board.
Good. And you are in the Sarasota Airport?
Right now, I'm in the Charlotte Airport
Oh,
on
that's
my
right,
way to
Charlotte.
Virginia.
Well,
Mhm.
thank you very much for it's very quiet in the background. And I'm surprised and pleased. Sarah,
hiding out
are we having trouble, Sarah, with the other commissioners? Are their audio?
Well, it looks like that John is disconnecting to audio. There might be an issue there, but that's the only one I know of.
All
I'm
right.
fine. I can hear you all perfectly.
Good. Sarah, why don't you have the staff, you and the staff introduce yourselves?
Okay, well, I'll start. I'm Sarah Lico, and I'm the program administrator for the division. And important for you guys, I am your liaison with the division, and I help disseminate information between you. And I also manage our federal grants, which takes up a lot of my time, and do other necessities for the division.
Right. And would you have the staff in the room introduce themselves with you?
Sure. Tim, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. I'm Tim Parsons. I'm the Director of DHR and Florida State Historic Preservation Officer. And my main job is to do what the three people in this room tell me to do. And with me in the room are Sarah, of course, Alyssa Lotane, who's our Bureau Chief of Historic Preservation, and Dr. Katie Millar, who's our Bureau Chief of Archaeological Research. So they can now introduce themselves. Although I've now introduced them, so I hope I didn't make that awkward for y'all.
No, hi, it's Alyssa Lotane. I'm the Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Historic Preservation, and I'm also a Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer. And so mainly I oversee all of the federally mandated programs like the Florida Master Site File, the National Register, Certified Local Government, Compliance and Review, and then Main Street, which is not a federally mandated, but it's a great program. So I'll tell you more about those when I give my report shortly.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm Katie Millar. I'm the State Archaeologist and Bureau Chief of the Bureau of Archaeological Research, and I oversee the three archaeological programs that we have here at the state, which is public lands archaeology, collections and conservation, as well as underwater archaeology. And I also help to make determinations for the state regarding jurisdiction and oversee that 872, which is the Human Remains Protections Florida statute, in compliance with any human remains that are greater than 75 years deceased throughout the state.
Thank you, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think that's it. Is that right? Sarah, we got everybody introduced now?
Yes.
Great. So our first order of business is to adopt our agenda. I hope all of you received the agenda and have taken a look at it. And I need are there any addition or corrections to the agenda? If not, I need a motion from a commissioner to adopt the agenda.
This is Kathleen, and I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Kathleen. Is there a second?
Dr.
Second.
Cliff?
Got that, Sarah?
I think there were two people who gave a second, and I couldn't really tell who was speaking. Sorry.
Would we have a repeat of the second to the motion and identify yourself?
Dr. Smith, I second the motion.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. Is there any more discussion on the agenda? All right, all in favor, please signify aye. I guess you should say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, so the motion passes. Now, we have next order of business is, I hope you've taken a look at the minutes from our February the 4th meeting and taken a look at them. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to the meeting minutes of February the 4th? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the minutes of February the 4th. Please identify yourself when you're giving a motion, making a motion.
This is Kathleen. I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second? I need a second.
This is Dr. Smith. I'll be glad to make the second.
Great, thank you. All right, any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Tony, Michael, good. All opposed? All right, that passes. The next item is the chairman's comments. Well, I don't have too many comments this time. Our primary goal of our commission this year was to get special category funding for our special category grants. And the legislature approved the entire list this year. It is in the queue in the budget, and I have not heard any concerns about about it. I know their legislature is going into a special session next week, and I suspect after that session, the budget will be sent to the governor. The governor does not have the budget yet. And so, Tim, when is the deadline for the governor to sign the budget after he gets it? 30 days?
That's a great question. I think you're correct, but ultimately it just has to be done by June 30th. That's the main thing that I lose sleep over. Just ensuring that we have a signed budget by June 30th, so we can keep moving forward with our programs.
Right, right. Yeah, that's what I think too. So no news, no bad news, no good news. I think we're in a good spot. We, of course, have changed secretaries of state, but Tim will bring you up to speed on that. And really, that's all I've got. I'm good for this this time. We're keeping our eye on things, and we are not. We don't have any major concerns. The coalition, which we formed in a leadership position to get funding for the special category grants, worked nicely. We all enjoyed the 6. There are 6 statewide historic organizations in the state, historic preservation organizations, and the chairman or presidents of all 6 have met, formed a coalition to get funding, and I think the coalition is going to last. There will always be an issue that we need to work on, and as the lead historic preservation organization in the state, it is good to focus on issues and for us to keep moving forward. So those really are my brief comments this time. And now let's move to the director's comments with Dr. Parsons.
Thank you, Dr. Bentz. You covered some of my ground, so I'll try and be brief as well so we can keep moving. First, I want to welcome, well, all the commissioners like I always do, but particularly Commissioner Cortez on his first historical commission meeting. I know we tried over the last few weeks to arrange a couple of tours, and the schedule just didn't keep working out. So anytime that you'd like to come up and join me and some of our staff for a tour, and of course this invitation is extended to all the commissioners at any time. For those of you that aren't tired of my tours yet, please just let me know, and we'll work it out, and we're happy to walk through some of our facilities, and it'll be a good time. The big news here over the last couple of weeks, and all of my news is kind of high level, because as far as fast moving type things, the summer period is kind of our slow period where we have a lot of administrative duties to take care of, but not a whole lot of acute things occurring. But of course, the big news is Secretary Laura Lee did resign. I can't remember the exact date, but it was toward the beginning of last week. She announced her resignation. Her final day as Secretary of State was this past Monday. And Governor DeSantis appointed our new secretary, Secretary Cord Bird, and his appointment became effective on Tuesday. I had the opportunity to meet him yesterday at kind of a brief meeting / breakfast get-together with him and the department leadership here at the Department of State. You know, first impressions are important, and my first impression is that he was a very friendly person who seemed very interested in historical resources and history beyond the kind of History Channel, hey, I love history attitude that some people have. So I was very encouraged by that. He seems to have an authentic interest. Of course, he's been very transparent, and Governor DeSantis has been as well, that the focus is kind of going to be on elections. But you know, that's okay. That's not really a problem for us. You know, we've kind of got our yearly agenda set every year, and we just keep on trucking through. He says he's looking forward to being very supportive. And also, you know, we talked for a few minutes about the Historical Commission. And unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. I invited him, but as you might expect, the first and second week for a new Secretary of State are pretty busy. In fact, I saw them walking out the door this morning as I was coming in, so they're headed somewhere. But I'm looking forward to working with Secretary Byrd and seeing, you know, where we go over the next couple of years. I'm really sorry to see Secretary Lee go. She was, you know, very, very supportive of our programs, and you know, I'll mention a couple of things as I kind of work my way briefly through the budget as proposed. Of course, it's not signed by the governor yet. Some things that we really owe a debt of gratitude to her for helping make possible. So, you know, fair winds to Secretary Lee, and I wish her the best in the future. And, you know, we'll welcome Secretary Byrd, and we're all looking forward to working with him as well. In other news, of course, that's the big news. That's where a whole lot of energy has gone recently. But in big news, in big historical news, today, May 20th, is Emancipation Day in Florida. That is the day that the Emancipation Proclamation was read from the steps of the historic Knott House, which is one of our historical museums here in Tallahassee. And of course, that follows President Lincoln's issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. We beat Texas. Juneteenth has become the federal holiday, and I grew up in Texas, and I remember, you know, Juneteenth, and that's a great holiday as well. But you know, in Florida, and particularly in Tallahassee, we recognize the 20th of May as Florida's Emancipation Day. And Governor DeSantis did yesterday issue a proclamation recognizing Emancipation Day, so we were very excited about that. And then at 11:30, speaking of Secretary Byrd, at 11:30 this morning, his very first public appearance as Secretary of State will be providing the opening remarks on the steps of the Knott House prior to a dramatic reading of the Emancipation Proclamation. So I'm happy to send out to the commissioners a press release and a copy of the Emancipation, or I'm sorry, of the I just keep wanting to say Emancipation, of the Proclamation from, thank you, Sarah, from Governor DeSantis, so that y'all can read them. But I don't want to read them word for word because it'll take up a lot of time, and time is precious for everybody. But I'm really happy that our meeting fell on May 20th. That's the first time I can remember that happening. And kind of fun, for the very first time, I'll actually be able to get over there at 11:30 this morning and watch the dramatic reading. For the last few years, there's always been something that has come up, and I haven't been able to go. So I'm excited to drive over to the Knott House and see that. Anyway, I'm just excited about that, as you can tell. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. I will take just a few minutes and kind of go through the budget because there are some really special things in there that I'll mention kind of at the end.
That's like an hour.
I'm sorry?
Eggs.
Oh. I won't take too long, but it was a good budget year for us. Really, the last two budget years have been good. As Dr. Bentz mentioned, importantly, every single one of the special category grants that were approved by the Secretary of State and recommended by this commission are going to be funded this year to the tune of about $21 million. So that's exceptional news. Actually, about $21.5 million. That's the first time since I've been division director that the entire special category list has been funded. So I know we're all excited about that. In addition, the small matching list was also fully funded. So in addition to the $1.5 million recurring dollars, that we receive from the legislature every year. They filled out the rest of the list with another close to $1 million. Now, that has happened before, but that's still a sizable amount to put forward in our grant program. And so we're flush with funding for our grants this year, and that's great news. And it's the credit goes to all of the folks who went and lobbied the legislature and had meetings with members to emphasize the importance of this program. Of course, that's something that we can't do in the division, is go over and knock on doors and talk to legislators. But the coalition did, that Dr. Bentz put together with other statewide leaders and worked with Secretary Lee to accomplish. So, really great news there. In other budget news, we got our recurring $500,000 for historic properties maintenance, which, speaking of tours, I'll be happy to show off some of the facilities that are benefiting from those funds, as well as federal ARPA funds that the state received. So if you were to kind of tour our historic properties in Tallahassee, every single one of our historic buildings, historic structures is some way benefiting either from this recurring appropriation from the legislature or from the federal funding that came as part of COVID-19 coronavirus relief. So it's going to be a very busy year for construction around DHR, and a lot of contracts spinning around. But we're doing a lot of deferred maintenance type activities that we've really needed to take care of for a long time. Work at the Governor Martin House at BAR, the Carriage House that is right there next to the Governor Martin House that is part of that historic site has been in dire need of some work, and that's one of the first projects to kind of be completed with last year's funds, obviously, or current year funds, but also more work to be done. We're doing work over at Mission San Luis on the council house, which of course needs to be rethatched. That's a huge project. It's a $1 million project. So we're excited about having the funding to be able to do that. And one thing that I've also wanted to prioritize for a few years, but just haven't had the funding to do it, is taking a good hard look at, I almost said the Merritt Drive house, but at the historic house out on the property at Mission San Luis. That has kind of suffered. The Messer House. Thank you, Alyssa. It's kind of suffered in sort of a deferred maintenance stagnation for a while just because of lack of funding. So we're very excited about that. And then also we're spreading the wealth and helping out our sister division, the Division of Arts and Culture. As Director Sandy Shaughnessy says, I'm sort of their landlord over at the Brokaw-McDougall House, and so we've allocated some funding to do some electrical repairs, and in addition to a number of other things, both structural and kind of superficial, that need to be done over there at that wonderful property. The other big news that isn't really coming out of normal appropriations is, number one. This is something that Katie and I have talked with Secretary Lee about ever since she became secretary a few years ago, and we thought we had the funding for it once, and it was vetoed. It fell through. This year, as long as the budget is signed, we will get it, and Dr. Bentz and many of the commissioners understand the importance of this, and that's $13.8 million from GR for the design and construction of an artifact curation facility. So, of course, we've been, splitting wide open just due to being basically completely filled, no space left for any artifacts recovered from state lands. And so after many years of a lot of effort, we should be able to, cross your fingers, all things being equal, move forward starting in the next fiscal year with the design process, followed, of course, by construction for a new artifact curation facility. So obviously, we're super excited about that. That's just going to be revolutionary for us, and we've also kind of built into the plans, as long as everything moves forward, some things that are kind of baked into it to make the facility more open to the public, so we can do a little bit more public outreach at our actual artifact curation facility, which is something that, due to its current design, isn't very feasible, just because it's difficult, particularly to have, for example, a classroom full of kids in a room with a bunch of very fragile artifacts. So we're hopeful that through the design process, we'll be able to make that facility more of an educational place and more accessible to school field trips and that are there for tours of Mission San Luis, and just make it more accessible to the general public. The other thing that we're excited about is the legislature saw fit to appropriate a non-recurring sum of $30.3 million roughly to bolster the African American Cultural and Historical Grants Program. Of course, right now I believe it's about $23 million was received from the federal government as part of coronavirus relief funding that the legislature last year earmarked for the African American Cultural and Historical Grants Program. That's great news because it makes it possible for us in the Division of Arts and Culture to fund about twice as many of these important grant applications. Several of you were either on the committee that reviewed those grants, or were otherwise, in and out of the hearing and paying attention. So, we're really happy that we're going to be able to fund some of those important projects, especially because over the last few years, Alyssa and I, and really all of us here at DHR, have really made a push to try and emphasize the need to recognize historic properties and historic districts, buildings, et cetera, that tell the story of the history of underrepresented populations in Florida. And so we're very, very excited about this. It's also going to be a tremendous challenge because all in all, that's getting close to $60 million in funding just for one specific grant program. So our grant staff and Sarah are working very hard to make sure that all the contracts get signed. And we're getting close to executing those contracts. Those will start getting signed very, very soon. For that initial $23 million, of course, this $30 million is pending the governor's signature on the budget, which we hope will come soon. Dr. Bentz, I think that concludes the comments that I wanted to touch on. But of course, there are a lot of things that are always going on, and sometimes you'll have questions. So if there are any questions from the commission, I'd be very, very happy to try and answer them.
Well, thank you, Tim. I am just in shock. When you read off your division is that we try to help you take care of is doing so well in the budget. I am very happy. This is a testament to Secretary Lee, to our legislators, to the leadership, but also to the people that joined in our effort to get you decent funding to make up, for past years when there was a lot of one-time money, non-recurring money, that everybody else got it, but the Division of Historical Resources. And I got my fingers crossed, as I know you do, that come July 1, you will begin to catch up and move forward. That's just excellent. Thank you very much, Tim. Any questions that any of the commissioners have for Dr. Parsons? Right. Well, let's move to our committee reports with the Bureau of Archaeological Research update with Dr. Katie Miar.
Thank you, Judy. And as part of what I mentioned, as part of my duties as state archaeologist, I respond to human remains cases that are greater than 35 years deceased, that were never buried in a formal Western cemetery. And we're very busy with that, with development across the state. And last year we responded to 85 cases, new cases under Florida Statute 872. And this year we've already responded to 30 cases. So that keeps us pretty busy. And of course, in doing so, if any of those remains are of Native American origin, I work very closely with the Seminole Tribe of Florida and Miccosukee Tribe of Indians under our statute to repatriate and rebury those remains. We've also, as part of our duties with our collections, and under 872, if we have to take jurisdiction of remains, we have to do federal NACRA compliance. And so we've also been working very closely with the tribal nations to repatriate and rebury with our NACRA collections as well. But I wanted to quickly, of course, our staff is always busy adhering to 267, which is another Florida statute for cultural resources, and our permitting programs, 1A32 and 1A31 programs. But I wanted to hit some highlights of some of our different programs since we last spoke in February. So our public lands archaeology program took the lead for Archaeology Month. So March was Florida Archaeology Month, and one of the things that they did was open a unit at Mission San Luis. It was based on ground penetrating radar data. They were looking for evidence of the location of an intact portion of the El Camino Real, and I know Rick Gonzalez was excited about this, so I was hoping he was going to be on the call. But which is roughly, if you translate it, it's the King's Highway, which was a Spanish trail that was cleared in the 1680s, mostly over traditional trails of Native Americans at the time. But it went from St. Augustine westward, traversed that way to the Spanish missions in North Florida. And so our archaeologists, this was open to the public, so the public was invited to view excavations, the excavation of this trench, with our archaeologists to see how professional archaeologists work, and also see how archaeology inspires and also provides for the interpretation of reconstruction of living history museums such as Mission San Luis. That's what the council house is that Dr. Parsons was talking about earlier with the rethatching and the placement of that and how things look are all based on archaeological evidence. And in this 2x4 meter unit, they did indeed find an intact portion of the El Camino Real. So the GPR survey really did lead us in the right direction of that. And so that was very exciting. And also on top, below that actually, stratigraphy-wise, they also found some posts of what they believe to be Appalachie posts of a pre-mission site. So we have different temporal layers there, as well as some intrusive historic U.S. roads on top of the El Camino Real. But that was a very exciting thing. And I think next year for Archaeology Month, we're going to open a unit next to that to try and expose the road and the Appalachie structures a bit more. As a joint effort between our public lands archaeology and our underwater staff, two of our archaeologists are currently drafting a paper that's going to publish for the first time the spatial and temporal data of the distribution of Florida's dugout canoes. And I don't know if you guys know, but that Florida really has the largest known assemblage of archaeological canoes in the world, and also has some of the oldest, dating to 8,000 years old. So we have that traverse all the way from archaic period all the way to historic times. And while there have been a bunch of publications about canoes in Florida, a lot of times they just focus on specific canoes or specific sites or general locations. But this publication that our archaeologists are working on is to publish the full temporal data set of all these canoes in Florida. And you can see the amazing inner workings of trade and travel throughout Florida that has been through pre-contact all the way to historic times throughout Florida. Our underwater archaeologists and I have also been working very closely with Mayaca River State Park, as well as with their land managers and their law enforcement to help assist them with documenting their submerged cultural resources, but as well as assisting them with issues that are resulting from unauthorized digging, using power tools, from unauthorized fossil and artifact hunting in that river. Some of our underwater archaeologists were recently asked to contribute to a PBS Nova episode, and that episode focused mostly on lionfish, but they used it as an opportunity to talk about the numerous historic shipwrecks and artificial reefs and underwater archaeology throughout Florida and underwater submerged cultural resources in Florida on that episode as well. We are in the process of hiring 3 new underwater archaeologists. We've had some turnover in that program, but we're excited about the possibilities of bringing some new people on board. So that's going to be happening in the next few months. In regards, we're so excited about the potential for a collections facility. It's very needed. There's been a collections space crisis basically here and throughout the world. It's a problem that's systemic throughout the world. But we are very, very excited. We, in particular, are statutorily required to accept artifacts and take in artifacts through the permitting program and other programs from state-managed lands, including sovereignty submerged lands. And we also, do our due diligence to really make sure that the public gets access to these artifacts. And so we have a very active research program at our current collections facility. We have quite a bit of researchers that come in. We also send out a lot of collections on loan to institutions such as the University of West Florida and various universities across the country and internationally. But also we really push to have our artifacts put on exhibit throughout the state of Florida, and there's also some outside of the state of Florida as well. And so we've created an interactive map for Archaeology Month that's now going to be a permanent map that's on our website, where you can click on your area and look for any museum or exhibit space that's going to show where the state's artifacts are, or the people's artifacts that are going to be on display there. And we usually try to make sure that they're at institutions that are free and open to the public. And so you can also see which artifacts, what types of artifacts are on display from the state at those exhibits. So that's been a great addition to our program. And some of the stuff that's actually on exhibit right now that we just finished in our wonderful conservation lab, which I really do hope that some of you come that haven't seen our conservation and collections facilities and get to do a tour. It's really pretty eye-opening. We have our conservation lab is unique throughout not just the Southeast, but probably throughout the world. We have a very active wet and dry lab portion due to our underwater historic shipwrecks, as well as all these canoes that need very special treatment when they're recovered from their submerged environment. And so a couple of the things I just wanted to highlight that are now on exhibit, the brown vest muskets, which were recovered from a store wreck shipwreck site. They date to 1782. They're from a British loyalist vessel, and they're gorgeous. I mean, the before and after photos, I wish I could show you. They were really difficult conservation efforts because the composite materials, both of the wood and the metal, had to be taken apart and treated separately. And now they just look, they're just stunning. And actually, there's been a couple of news articles about them. And now they're on exhibit at the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum. And just recently, they completed treatment of the Brazington Lake Geneva canoe, which was donated to the state in 2015. And it's a 16 to 17-foot dugout canoe. And now it's on exhibit at Crystal River Archaeological State Park. So I think that's what I just want to highlight briefly for right now. Anybody has any questions?
That was extremely thorough. Thank you for that report.
Okay. No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. It is just wonderful that you're going to get a new, the state is going to have a new curation facility. That's just excellent. It's a very good use for the citizens and Florida's material culture heritage that we have. I am just impressed. And so anyway, so it is, thank you very much for your report. You're busy, you're in charge, and you've got your fingers on the pulse of archaeology in the state of Florida. And we all appreciate your efforts. Next is Alyssa Lotane, who is going to give us an update on Historic Preservation Bureau in DHR.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Ben. I am Alyssa Lotane. I'm the Bureau Chief for Historic Preservation, and Dr. Parsons already talked about it being Emancipation Day, but in addition to that, it's also Historic Preservation Month. So happy Historic Preservation Month. Each year in May, we celebrate, and this year's theme is Preserving Historic Cemeteries. And as part of this, we're highlighting our Historic Cemetery Initiative to record the locations of all the cemeteries in the state of Florida that are 50 years old or older. You might think that we would know where all those are, but many of them are in remote locations. As of now, we have just over 1,700 cemeteries recorded in our Florida Master Site File. If you don't know what the site file is, that is our state's inventory of historic and cultural sites. We have about a little over 238,000 sites recorded in total, and that's ever increasing. and just about, like I said, 1,700 are cemeteries, and we think that there are 5,000 to 7,000 cemeteries in the state that are 50 years of age or older. So following the African American Cemeteries Task Force back in 2021, we partnered with the Florida Public Archaeology Network, and we were able to finalize our cemetery initiative. And Sarah, if you could type in maybe is it in there, the website, you'll see fpan.us/HCI. That is our website where you or the public can go and tell us about locations of historic cemeteries that you know about. There are about 10 questions on there. We also, as part of that, have a postcard. Thank you, Dr. Vince. I'm glad you have those handy. Dr. Vince graciously took a large stack of those yesterday that she's going to help us to disperse. If anyone else on the commission would like any, I guess contact Sarah, and we can mail you some. And then you'll see on the back there, it's got the website. So mostly we're looking for locations, and we're just looking to crowdsource the information. You know, the folks that know where some of these cemeteries are, you know, maybe older folks, and we're trying to find them all, because right now we review federal and state undertakings and permitting for impact to historic resources, and there have been incidences where cemeteries have been found inadvertently. And I speak of historic cemeteries, and this does not include archaeological sites. Those are recorded a little differently. But there's basically a 2-page form that we normally have data on for a cemetery, and I think it maybe intimidates people in doing it themselves. So our hope is that by giving this minimal information, you know, people will turn these in, and they don't even have to supply their contact information if they don't want to. But the way it'll work is they mail the card in or put in the information, and then if they'd like to be contacted, we will email them back and we'll say, hey, yes, we know where that cemetery is already. Would you like to tell us anything else? If it's new information to us, then we'll reach out to them and put them in touch with FPAN and the regional office of FPAN, and they can actually go out, and if it's not on private property, because we don't want people to go on private property without permission, we can have them go out and verify the location of the cemetery. So next time we have a development project, you know, we see it on our GIS, it gets plotted on GIS, and we'll be able to share that, you know, with property appraisers, with, you know, local governments, so they as well know about local development projects in areas that they may want to avoid. So we're really excited about that. So far, we've received, I think, about 49 entries. About a third of those have been ones that we didn't know about. And we've sent over maybe a handful, 4 or 5, to FPAN to contact folks. So also, as part of our cemetery initiative for Preservation Month, we had some cemetery tours last week. We're highlighting cemeteries in our Florida Main Streets and on our Main Street Facebook page. And then next week on May 24th, which is Tuesday at 10 a.m., we're going to hold a webinar panel discussion about our cemeteries initiative and resources available for preserving historic cemeteries. So I'll be taking part in that, and actually moderating, and then we'll have several of our division staff, including our state archaeologist, Dr. Catherine Miar, on that call. So definitely put out that information, tell people all about it. We really, really want to highlight the cemetery initiative. Also, the Florida Master Site File is continuing to work on their IT upgrade for their database. Right now, all of our consultants are definitely accessing that information remotely, but we want to have more of a actual public interface so that people could look at minimal data, not locations of archaeological sites, but minimal data online. So that's where we're headed. I'm hoping for 2023. I don't have a date yet, but I know we're working on the project internally rather than under a contract. So it just sort of depends on what resources that we have available there. Also, the site file is going to be very busy this coming summer because, as I've mentioned a couple times before, we are working on countywide surveys. As a result of Hurricane Michael, we received about $12 million in the appropriation, and we ended up putting $2 million of that toward historic structure surveys. And then we did 6 counties, and those counties were Calhoun, Gulf, Liberty, Jackson, Wakulla, and Franklin. And so we have consulting contracts for those consultants to go out and record individually those resources on site forms, take photographs, do a report. They'll also recommend to us whether or not those structures are eligible for the National Register, either individually or as part of the district. We've also been working and the consultants have been working with the local government in order to make sure everybody's aware. And when people go and start taking pictures of people's houses, sometimes they can get a little questioning and wonder what's going on. So we've really tried to do public meetings and outreach in those areas to let people know that we're out to preserve historic resources. And we also did one in Gadsden County. Our areas in Quincy, Chattahoochee, and Havana are pretty well certified, pretty well recorded, but we have reached out to those areas, actually about 14 unincorporated areas of Gadsden County, to record historic resources in those rural and underserved areas. So we did Gadsden, the other counties that I mentioned with Hurricane Michael funding. We are in the process of getting draft reports, and we should have the site forms and the final reports in our hands by August. So we're really excited. This is going to add, I think, about 20,000 resources to the Florida Master Site File. And the really good thing about it is that next time there is a disaster, and we start getting in those requests, those compliance and review requests for federal or state reviews, and FEMA and things like that, we'll know where those resources are, and we'll already have a handle on which of those resources are historic, which ones may be 50 years old but not significant, and so we'll have a really good baseline and, again, be able to share that information with the local government so that they're aware of the resources that they have. So really, really excited about that. And I really hope to, I don't hope that there are any more hurricanes, but I do hope that in the future we're able to get some more funding to continue this process, especially in the Panhandle and those counties that have very little survey that has been done, and continue with that in the future. We're also wrapping up a project with some of our Hurricane Irma funding. There was a disaster mitigation project that was done. I don't know if you've seen, we had some disaster mitigation documents that were done probably 15 years ago, and now we're updating those and actually including documents that could be used by homeowners and local government. So more to come on that in our next meeting. I want to thank the commissioners who attended our National Register Review Board meeting yesterday. We had a great meeting. I had to leave at the very end, but I think that all of our nominations passed the board and will be forwarded on to the National Park Service. And I so appreciate Ruben Acosta and his National Register staff. I honestly just enjoy sitting here and listening to his stories and presentations about each of the sites, like getting a history lesson on every property. As those get listed, we do press releases, so I hope that you're seeing some of those out there. We've got a very wide pickup usually with the press releases that we do when those actually get listed by the National Park Service. Let's see. As I mentioned yesterday in our meeting, I have asked the National Register staff to help focus on those countywide surveys that I was talking about to help us evaluate the properties when they come in. And so we may see a short agenda in September. So it's going to be all hands on deck this summer when the site file and the National Register to get those surveys processed and go through those site forms. On the Certified Local Government Program, I'm proud to announce that we now have 83 certified local government, and that is one of the highest in the nation. I know we're in the top 5, and the number keeps on rising so fast, I can't quite keep up with it. We had 3 new ones in March, which was Deerfield Beach, Lake Butler, which is the county seat of Union County, and Winter Park. And if you are familiar with the Certified Local Government Program, or we refer to it as CLG program, it is a partnership of federal, state, and local government where the local government is certified, basically by the National Park Service. They have their own qualified historic preservation ordinance, local ordinance. They have a local landmark process, and then they have a local review board. And what this does is it really brings that local review down to that local level, so they can look at their local history. And so we're proud to have those new CLGs join us, and we're continually working with more to bring more on board. Our CLG coordinator, Mariah Justice, will be traveling down south next week to DeLand to conduct some training for DeLand and a couple other cities. And yeah, it's just incredible how the program has expanded over the last few years. And people always, from other states, always ask us, you know, what do you do? How do you recruit CLGs? And, you know, we do some outreach, but I think that in general, you know, people join the program because they are aware, you know, that development is expanding in Florida and they want to have that ability at their local level to protect the resources that they find to be important. I mentioned earlier compliance and review, which reviews those state and federal undertakings for impacts to cultural resources. We have a 30-day mandate to review those development projects, and we're right at that 30-day deadline right now. We're still facing some staffing shortages, but we have 2 new hires that are in process, and we are on track for another record year in compliance to review at least 12,000 projects. So that's sort of the top end of what we've done, but we may even go beyond that. Our Florida Main Street program is doing great. Since you met last time, since February, we've actually had 2 quarterly meetings. One was in Leesburg in early March, and the other one was in Marianna on May 2nd and 3rd, which I actually attended. And if you haven't been through Marianna, if you saw any of the photos right after Hurricane Michael, they have just done a great job of fast transformation and recovery of that town. So it was really great to be over there and see everything that's been going on there. We are heavily in the planning stages for the Main Street Conference, our annual Main Street Conference, which is actually now called the Preservation on Main Street Conference because we partner with the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. This will be our 3rd year partnering with them on our conference. And the conference will be in DeLand this year on July 27th through 30th, and we'd love to have all of you to participate. You can see more on the conference by going to the registration website, which is preservationonmainstreet.com, or get in touch with Sarah, and she can provide that information to you. All the events will be held in various locations on DeLand Main Street or at Stetson University, and we'll actually cap off the educational sessions and the tours on the last day with a trip to Casadega, which is a place I've never been, and I'm excited about going. Let's see, shortly after our last meeting, we did select and hire a new Main Street assistant. Her name is Ramira Corbett, and so she's jumped right in with us and helping with the conference planning. Also on our architectural services, it's not really a section anymore, but the services we provide and also the tax credits, the federal historic preservation tax credits. At our last meeting, I announced that we have hired Dr. Kira Lucas to manage our historic preservation tax credit program. She has a PhD from the University of Florida in historic preservation, and she's quickly jumped in to clean up everything, the database, after that position was vacant for a while. She's also assisting the grants section in reviewing the project work on those projects, and she's also cross-training on our compliance review section. So she's really great. I can't keep up with her. She's really fast. A quick update on our state historic preservation tax credit, which I had mentioned at a couple of our previous meetings. Since we met in February, session ended, obviously, and there were 2 bills that were introduced and pushed by the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. One was H. Bill 247, and the other was SB 1310. And those were filed back last fall. They were nearly identical bills. They were identical by the end of the session. It was known as the Main Street Revitalization and Historic Tourism Act. And Senate Bill 1310 made it all the way through committee with minimal amendment and unanimous votes all the way. But basically, time ran out in session, and the bill was not taken up in the final committee, which was Ways and Means. Similar track in the House, HB 247 started a bit late, and it made it through with minimal amendment all the way to appropriations, but was not heard in appropriations. So the Florida Trust is committed to revising the bill and getting it back into the legislature. We obviously can't advocate for it, but we are watching it carefully to make sure that it's, the language in the bill is something that's manageable. Essentially, it would be a bill that would, if you got the federal historic preservation tax credit, then you could get the state one. So you have to get the federal in order to get the state. It would be an additional 20% federal tax credit for most properties, but if the property was in a Main Street district, a certified Main Street district, in the boundaries, they would get an additional 30% credit. So watch for that. And then finally, I wanted to update you on our comprehensive plan. The division has submitted the draft of our five-year statewide historic preservation comprehensive plan to the National Park Service on April 15th. And that is required every 5 years for us to continue to receive our federal funding. We expect to hear back in about 45 days, which will be around June 1st, with any edits the Park Service has, and then we'll revise as necessary and submit the final. So we expect to roll out the new plan this fall in an online version, and we'll still need to discuss whether we're having public meetings. Hopefully we'll have public meetings this fall and into spring of 2022. I do plan to give a short update on the plan at the Preservation on Main Street Conference in July at the closing session, where we'll also announce the location of our 2023 conference. And I'm really excited about our new statewide goals in the comp plan. I think they reflect the way that preservation is headed as a field and being more inclusive. Yesterday, we talked at the NR meeting about utilizing oral histories and working with underserved communities to protect resources, and I think the new comp plan encourages that. I think preservation as a field is moving towards emphasis on community and on shared experiences that historic preservation, that places can convey, and not just, so I know we all like beautiful structures. I think, you know, we're really working to expand our appreciation of that history. So thank you all. That concludes my update, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you,
Quick
Alyssa.
question.
I heard,
I had a quick question. Is that 5-year draft comp plan something you can share?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't quite hear all of that.
Is that 5-year draft comp plan something that can be shared?
I think so.
I think we'll be happy to share it after we get comments back from the National Park Service. So the first step after we draft it is to send it to NPS, because they basically approve our 5-year comp plan. And then once that language is approved, because basically it can't go forward at all in any form until the National Park Service gives us the green light. So hopefully, I'll be honest, they tend to be pretty pokey when it comes to their review of these things. So it could be a few weeks, or even last time it was a couple months, but I think we'd be happy to share it with the commission if there's an interest in seeing it.
I definitely have an interest in seeing it because we are right at the tail end of redoing our comp plan, but ours is a 10-year comp plan cycle, and would love to see what kind of language you all used for the underserved communities and the oral history and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, once we get it back from the National Park Service and they give us the thumbs up that we're headed in the right direction, because I want to give some credit where credit's due. Alyssa took this on. And of course, a number of people contributed. You know, Katie contributed, Sarah contributed, Ruben contributed. I didn't contribute too much writing to this one because I kind of rewrote the last one, so I left this one to them. You know, Alyssa really held the reins on this and just did a superb job in putting all these together. And when she started on it, you know, really a year and a half or so ago,
it was challenging because it was during the pandemic, and we always tried to do public meetings.
So basically the only direction I told Alyssa is like, look, you know the direction we're trying to go, go forth and write something that reflects that. And I think she really did a great job, and, you know, getting input from the public, you know, using our staff here. So I'm excited to share it. So I you know, definitely as soon as, I'm a little bit paranoid about the Park Service because sometimes they come back with comments or want insertions that we look at and go like, what? But definitely looking forward to sharing it with y'all. And then of course, we can take suggestions, comments, recommendations as well. So, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing what y'all have to say about it because, you know, that can certainly lead to some improvements too.
Thank you, Tim.
And I heard a lot of that yesterday at the National Register review meeting, but again, Alyssa, thank you so much for that update. It's unbelievable how much you guys have taken on.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you very much. There's been a lot of things that have wrapped up that I've been working on in my career for a long time, so I'm really excited that the surveys and the comp plan and the cemetery initiative are really big things that I've been pushing for a while. So thank you. Really happy to get them done.
Thank you, Alyssa. Our next report is from Dr. Parsons on the grants program.
Thanks, Dr. Bentz. I kind of went ahead and wound that up into my initial report, because normally this would be given by Dr. Angie Tomlinson, who's our assistant director and who oversees at the level of the director's office our grants program. She's out on extended medical leave, so she left me to do what was probably a substandard job of informing y'all about where we are with our grants. But I'm happy to answer any questions, but I kind of took that info and just incorporated it into my initial comments.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Tim. That brings us to the business items, and we need to talk about the dates for our upcoming meetings. And
okay, so your next meeting is August 5th, Friday, August 5th, which is the day after the National Register meeting on the 4th. After that, you have the special category grant review meeting, which is September 28th and 29th. And I know Angie would want me to remind you all to please put those dates on your calendars now so that we don't have to reschedule them, because it's very important for you all to participate in that. And you need both of those dates. You need to participate on both of those dates, September 28th and 29th. And then the last date for this year right now is scheduled as November 11th, but which I guess is Veterans Day. So I think I still need to talk to Ruben about that. We might need to. Did he move it? Okay. I wasn't present yesterday, so if that was moved.
Well, I had it on my calendar for, I think. Did they talk about that yesterday?
At the National Register meeting yesterday, did Ruben move the November meeting date?
We discussed the fact that it was the holiday weekend, and we did not decide on whether or not to, how to redo or relocate that meeting date.
Okay.
Because you know, on the one hand, we always want to have the meetings following one another.
Yeah.
So the options are, we could have the Florida Historical Commission meeting early on the Wednesday before the National Register Review Board meeting instead of on the Friday following, or we could simply reschedule. Or, truth be told, you know, this meeting has, you know, I would love for people to start coming back in person, but it has kind of transitioned over the last couple of years into primarily a virtual meeting. So if the appetite was really just to kind of schedule this one separately, we could do that too. What I might suggest is that we throw out some dates in a doodle poll or something and try to find a time where we could have them on adjacent days, just because unless somebody tells me different, I get the impression that's kind of the most convenient for everyone. It sort of has been over the years. But just kind of by coincidence, it's falling on that holiday weekend.
Okay, well, we'll work the November date out. in the future. Okay, is there any other business anybody wants to bring up? How about let's see. Go ahead, please.
Hi, this is Kathleen. I'm about to board the plane, so I just wanted to mention just two things I wanted to bring up. The funding of the millions of dollars of funding this year by the legislature is simply stunning and astounding. And we should all make sure to, I know I had written emails and called a bunch of the offices, so it's also important to follow up with thank yous to them for making that happen. And I'm not sure this would be the best way to go, but I sometimes wonder if it wouldn't be best if we just lobbied for a particular line item budget for special CAT grants so that it's already there and that we don't have to go through this process every year of like pleading and asking. And sometimes we get 7 million, sometimes we get 14 million. This is the highest I've ever seen them funded in all my years doing this. And as you know, the last couple of years, we were at zero funding. So it would just be great if it already was a line item budget. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if we can ask for that or do that. But the other benefit that would have is that when we sit up there and we rank these projects, not every project really gets, I don't think every project deserves to get funded. And I think they were super generous by doing so this year, but there's clearly projects that, are grasping at straws, or they do not have enough of the right experience of preservation architects or whatever lined up to do the work, and it could be maybe not the best use of state funding. So I don't know, that's a thought. And then my second item I wanted to discuss was the salaries of Division of Historical Resources staff. I know, we've already said this, we've lamented about this a million times on this board, but this year, I really want to reach out to legislators or anybody who will listen and just ask them, like, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to make this an issue that is taken seriously? Because for those of you that may not know about the staffing issues at Division of Historical Resources, we've just lost two really fantastic grant people to Washington, D.C. And we am I allowed to talk about the CLG person? Our CLG person is leaving, and she is by far one of the best CLG certified local government coordinators we've had in the 25, 30 years I've been doing this. And it's really sad, but it's because their salaries are what you and I were getting paid as professionals in 1999, in 2000. It is that far behind. It's so sad. And there's just no way we can expect longevity. There's no way we can expect super high levels of incoming professionalism with some that kind of salary. So our people are doing so much work, and maybe part of the problem is they just don't understand how much work these men and women do and the importance of it. And if that's part of it, I'm perfectly comfortable talking about that to them, so I'm blue in the face. But I don't want to belabor this any longer. We've talked about it before, but there's got to be a way. Florida, we are the leaders in some of these initiatives, right? We're like in the top 5 now of CLG, the number of CLG's communities, but we're not paying them what they clearly deserve and what's right. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Kathleen, and I share your opinion too. One of the things that a long time ago, back in the early 2000s, there was an effort in the legislature to cut the positions in DHR, and by half, I believe it was. And the commission went on a campaign with the other historical societies, mainly the trust at that point, to educate the legislators what would happen to them if DHR was cut in half or not fully staffed, and Native American issues, grant issues, historic buildings issues, and they had never really quite heard about it or thought about it that way, and it worked. There were no cuts in DHR that year, or to my knowledge since. But at any rate, the point is that there are ways that we as a commission can begin to explore ways by which we could at least increase the recurring funds in the Division of Historical Resources, which could be used to raise staff salaries and hire new staff. And I don't know the details of it, but I think it's worthy of a conversation. And so I think that, Tim, why don't you and I and perhaps talk about it? Perhaps it might be a reason to schedule a meeting, a specific meeting with Secretary Byrd on this. I'm sure he does not know the situation that DHR is in. And it might be a good conversation to have. And it certainly would be something that our commission could take the lead on with all of our connections in a focused way. So what do you think, Tim?
Well, first let me say that I echo the concerns wholeheartedly. And I want to kind of be careful how I frame things, because as a state employee, I don't want to sound like I'm whining. And I also want to be really clear that those of us in management at DHR, are very fortunate, and they're definitely, and I feel guilty about this every day, there's certainly a pay gap between, our non-management staff and our management staff. And so I don't want to sound like I'm speaking on behalf of myself, because I don't need a raise. I wouldn't ask for a raise. And so I'm not coming at this for me saying that I want anything, because I don't. But I do want our people to be paid, and would love for our people to be paid competitively. And so I'm just going to speak with the absolute facts. We are not competitive. We are not competitive with the private sector, and we're not competitive with other states, and we're not competitive with the federal government. And I've got numbers that demonstrate that. It's obviously not hard to find, because public employee salaries are all public record in most states. And believe me, every employee in DHR, and indeed the Department of State, and probably all around state government, knows what their colleagues in other states make. The challenge that we face, and I'll frame this in terms of a challenge, is that there's not a month that goes by, almost literally, that we don't lose someone or multiple someones to another state, or to the federal government, or to the private sector. And almost bar none, when I meet with outgoing employees, because I obviously try to meet with everybody, the reason they're leaving is because of compensation. And that has turned into a hiring crisis. We're pretty close to kind of a crisis level of being able to actually get people to accept positions based on what we can offer. And the truth is that we have X number of basically what are called rate dollars. The legislature tells us how much we can spend, and to be candid, I start every year 6 figures in the red. So I have no flexibility in providing raises or in increasing salaries. And again, I'm not complaining. I'm just kind of stating the fact of the budget. And the reality is, it's always been an issue in 2022 in the post-pandemic world, when the private sector is offering a lot of flexibility with things like workstation, work from home, all of those kinds of things, in addition to the fact that the salaries are higher. Like, the benefits that used to come along that push state government kind of as a preferable option, things like health insurance, location, being in Florida, being in Tallahassee, those aren't the same kind of carrots that they used to be. And I hate to say that because I love working here. We have some of the, Kathleen can speak to this. You know, so many of our people, we have some of the best people you will ever meet working really hard, and they love what they do. But everybody's got to look out for number one, and so and look out for their families. And so when an opportunity comes up where they can make more money, they're going to take it, and that's where we're at. So that's a problem. And you know, obviously Secretary Lee and I have had that conversation many times, and you know, she struggles not just with DHR, but with other divisions within the Department of State as well with the same problem. Other state agencies do too. It's not just us. And I know that, you know, it's one of the, you know, Secretary Byrd is interested in hearing our challenges. That is always number one. You know, we've always got challenges. We've got a list of them. That's number one on our challenge list is finding and maintaining qualified staff. And it's, as division director in SHPO, that is actually my number one concern right now for us is having people here to, you know, and staying to do what we need to do. But real quick, I want to address the dollars for special category grants too. You know, Secretary Lee and I, Kathleen, had talked about requesting recurring dollars from the legislature at some point as part of our legislative budget request. We didn't know whether we were going to make that request this year or maybe in a future year. Obviously, the calculus has changed a little bit now because, you know, that's a discussion that I'll have to have with Secretary Byrd and see if that's something that he's interested in putting on our legislative agenda. I certainly hope so, and believe me, that discussion will be had, and that is also toward the top of my priority list. It's something that I've wanted to do and try to accomplish for a long time, because having that $1.5 million in recurring for small matching is just tremendous. And if we could do something along those lines with some amount of dollars for special category, I think that would be great.
Good. Well, I think that you've really got a staffing crisis, and I want to, for us to think about as a commission, that, you know, the legislature, the secretary has been very good at providing you, the division, with all of these grants, grant money, but they must be managed. And along with increasing our program money and having these successful programs they have to be underpinned with competent staff, not just raising staff salaries, but also more staff. So I want us to think about whether we would like to, of course, with the blessing of Tim and the secretary, take this on. And we probably need to decide this at our August meeting, if possible, at least give it a good talking to and see what we think, what's feasible, what's not feasible. And by that time, Secretary Byrd will have his feet on the ground a little bit more. So I think it's something we need to think about. We are here to help the division in historic preservation issues. And if this is a crisis, then we need to see what we can do about it. I don't know what we can do, but first we have to decide to do something, to pick the issue. I think recurring funding for special category is very important, and also staffing issues. Those are the two issues as a commission that I think we need to wrap our arms around. So all of you be thinking about that as the budget is signed, as we get into the next year, a little bit in August. I think we should put that on our agenda for next year, next meeting in August. And I would like to have, if we possibly can, our August meeting in person. We're a lot better, we're a lot more involved, we're a lot more, I don't know, we're a lot more engaged. When we meet in person. We have travel money. It's not like it's a money issue. And we have plenty of notice about when the meeting is. The meeting for most of the commissioners is only one day, actually one morning. So I would like to make a personal request to all of you commissioners and those who are not on the line, that we have our August 5th meeting in person in Tallahassee and talk about these issues that concern the division for which we are directed to enhance.
And you
John?
know, I love being there. I love being there in person, Judy. I would be there if I could.
Yes, you would. I know. I know.
Judy,
Yes.
yes, I'd be happy to go with anybody if you want to discuss it with the secretary. We're blessed cities from our part of the state.
Excellent.
With the governor yesterday, and we are flush with money in the state. We have a surplus and it's growing every day. So we should be in a good position. Now, what we did on the commission and DOT is we just went to the governor's office and explained to him nicely that we needed raises for some of the employees. And we can do that. I'm happy to help any way you want to. Secretary Bird is a good friend. I've known him for a long time. And he is going to be very powerful
Good.
because just coming out of the legislature, and he's
Mhm.
obviously liked by the governor. And I think we're in the best position we've been in a long time. Thank you.
That's excellent to know, John. I think that we will probably be taking you up on your advice and your presence. That's really good to know. We are and we can lobby and meet with, as a commission, meet with our active people in political offices and to explain to them what the issues are that they don't have any idea about, or how important these issues are to the functioning of an important part of Florida government. Thank you, John. I'm good. I'm glad to know that. Tony, you wanted to say something?
I've got a weed eater behind me, but I was going to say, to second John's point there, I think Secretary Byrd's got great relationships with the incoming speaker, obviously the governor and the appropriations chair next year. So I think we're in a great position with him coming directly from the legislature for some of those funding issues. And look forward to in-person meeting. And I don't know how you guys have done things in the past, but I would love to move them around the state at different points too, because I think that is beneficial for all of us.
Good. I think we might, I was thinking about meeting at San Luis or in Tallahassee instead of just in the Gray Building, but we'll talk about that at a later time and to let you all, everyone see what is there. All right.
I know somebody that can arrange that for you, Dr. Ben.
Now, Tim. I know you do. It's a very special place. And let me ask if there's anyone from the public on the line that would like to make a comment. If there is none, then I think that our meeting should be adjourned. I don't remember whether I need a motion or not, but I don't think so. Let us, I want to thank you all for attending, especially you, Kathleen, in the airport. And I appreciate all of your attention, and I hope to see you in person on August the 5th, somewhere in Tallahassee. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
You bet.
Thank you.